Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host of my new podcast, Pause and Rewind. I'll be chatting to changemakers, thought leaders, and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now. But how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now. Because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes, and what makes our guests tick. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey, welcome to this episode of Pause and Rewind, and I'm absolutely delighted for you to listen to this conversation with the amazing Eva Echo. Eva is an activist and campaigner. She is a public speaker, a TEDx speaker at that. Her TEDx talk is amazing. Go check it out. Eva is also the Director of Innovation for Birmingham Pride. She's a director for Trans in the City. And just an all-round amazing content creator. Eva educates people in the most fantastic, fascinating way. And we talk a little bit through the podcast around Eva's approach to how she does that. I love the way that Eva educates people and the way she calls people in and invites them along on the journey of understanding and awareness. I also really appreciate the way she calls people out. And we touch on that as well. Eva is not afraid to take people to task, and we dive into that a little bit more. But Eva has taken the government to task on waiting times for gender affirming care. And the way that she does this really is so smart and so sharp. I loved this conversation. I do want to just put a little bit of a trigger warning on there to say that I just want you to take care of yourself while listening. There's lots of conversation that we have around, growing up not feeling like you belong as a kid and, feeling that you're different. It's a common theme on this podcast, growing up as a queer kid. Through to conversations around mental health and struggles and family issues, again common themes. So do take care of yourself while listening. As always, there's a lot of joy, there's a lot of insight. So yeah, it's a great conversation with Eva. Let me know what you think. Here it is. Cheers. Hey there, Eva. I am so excited to see you. Welcome to Pause and Rewind.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
You are such a obvious guest for me to have on this. Everything that you do, I always love being on the receivership of that. And I also get the privilege of working alongside you on events as well. So um, let's start with a big question for you. What does the world look like for Eva Echo right now?
Oh, what a question to open with. Right now, I would say the world looks messy. That's the only way I can kind of just sum it up, I guess. I think there is so much going on politically, socially, so much going on with myself, with the communities I belong in. And I guess nothing is quite linear. Everything's very up and down, and I guess messy is probably the best word to describe it. Well, I mean, the only other word was is chaotic, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
I mean, on this podcast, when I asked that question, we've had messy, we've had shit show, we've had the world's on fire, and it does feel like that. And when you talk about the messiness, I think it's in terms of I think our identities and how we show up in the world, they overlap into so many of those social, political, environmental situations that we're finding ourselves in. And for you, as someone that wears many hats, director of Trans in the City, director of innovation at Birmingham Pride, author, writer, you must find yourself in so many different environments and spheres as a result of all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially like the transness, like
Mm.
that side of it for me, I can't escape it. Like the color of my skin, I could not go out. I wouldn't have to deal with racism. Maybe a bit online, I could just not go online. But I think when it comes to my transness, I can't escape at all. And, I could be at home, I could be on my own, I could just be listening to the news, and all of a sudden something will flag up about the trans community. And it's like, yeah, it really attacks you to your core. And then when you start to unravel all your identities, I guess you start to realize, we can't really truly hide from who we are. And therefore, there comes a point where we backpedal so much trying to hide that we think, this is not serving me or anyone that needs that representation. We need to pedal forwards and then go beyond that point of where we started from and to go even further.
That's it. I mean, it's a forced visibility in a way, isn't it?
Mm.
When I was talking to Saba Chowdhury on here the other day, Saba used the term reluctant activist.
Mm.
Um, you are an amazing content creator. You know, the way that you educate people is really creative. It's so sharp. Is there a reluctance that sometimes comes with having to do those sort of things?
Yeah, definitely. I guess Saba's absolutely 100%. Like, no one sets out to be an activist. And this goes, across all walks of life, any community that you belong to. You do it because you see something in the world and you think, I'm just going to try and fix that. I'm going to try and raise awareness. I'm going to try and open this conversation. Like when I first came out, I literally thought, I'm going to come out, I'm going to transition, I'm going to step back into doing what I do and carry on with life. And quite quickly, I realized that that's just so naive that, I can't just think about myself. And given the links with neurodiversity and the trans community, there is that part of you that has empathy with others, and you realize that bigger picture, I guess, a lot more easily than other people would do. And you do realize I can't just do this for me, sit back and watch the world burn. I've got to do something to prevent anyone else from having to feel like this. So I guess, yeah, that's how for me certainly it started. And like, yeah, when people say you're an activist, it took me a long time to relate to that word, because I guess the negative connotations, like the really extreme ones that you hear about on the TV, like, Extinction Rebellion, I always think I don't want to be associated with that. But I guess the more you do this sort of work, the more you realize it is disruption. It doesn't have to be an extreme disruption, but you're disrupting the norm, and you're disrupting it by basically being visible. And like you're saying, having to be visible, and say, here I am. And I guess it goes back to being trans, where to transition, to come out, you 9 times out of 10, you can't just look the same. There's an element from a physical point of view where you do and you will look different. And saying to the world, this is me, is basically saying my entire existence goes against what you all know of the world. So to come out as trans, non-binary, or gender non-conforming, you cannot just come out and just slip back in and go unnoticed. It's just not part of it. And like, I remember coming out when I was, well, first of all, bi years ago, and then I realized, well, I'm not strictly bi, but I guess in terms of sexuality, you can sort of hide it a bit more. Back then, I could just go to work and come home, and no one would really like even consider what my sexuality was, because I just I just looked heteronormative. But I guess with the trans side of things, it's really opened my eyes up to visibility, and that visibility is intrinsically linked with who I am, whether it's my transness, I guess my religion, being a person of color, that side of things. I just think, you know what? Let's just show who we are. And the more that people can see the diversity, the more people will get used to it.
That's it. I mean, you are bringing so many conversations out there by yourself being visible, and whether that is sometimes reluctantly and through responsibility, or because some of those opportunities that come your way, you are bringing so much joy to them. Particularly kind of some of your more recent projects. Are you happy to talk about some of
Yeah.
those that have maybe brought you a little bit of joy in that activism side of things?
Yeah, I guess a lot of my projects are born from frustrations that I see all around me, from other people, from myself. Um, And I guess like for me, it started in lockdown because we were inside the same four walls. And for me, that's when my activism really took off because I'd gone from just kind of dabbling and speaking out to really throwing everything into it because I guess with lockdown we all had that initial 2 or 3 week period where we all hit meltdown. I was drinking gin during the afternoon, playing Animal Crossing all day, every day, and I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing with my life? Like just because I'm stuck in these walls, I don't have to just descend into chaos. And I started to look at what I can do from behind a screen. So I'd started to do a lot more online content. Up until that point, I had never done any video before because I just didn't like it. But I guess I realized that we needed a new way to communicate being in lockdown, and video was it, whether it's live or whether it's online content. And that kind of forced me to have to embrace it, whether I liked it or not. I still don't quite like it, but I'm getting used to it, I guess. But for me, yeah, looking at the world around me and thinking, what frustrates me surely it must frustrate other people, and what can I do to address it to bring others up with me? And it started with a campaign called Pass It On, where it examined the idea of passing as a concept for the trans community and how it oppresses us, how it's hypocrisy, and how the media needs to do more to platform diverse trans plus bodies. And that was, I guess, for the first time, I realized there's an entire community out there who we never hear from. And that has been the backbone of most of my work. The people that we don't hear from, um, why don't we hear from them? What can we do so we do hear from them? And that really came to a peak in my most recent project, We All Have Voices, because going back to the messy I talked about at the start, at that time when it was conceived, the world was incredibly messy. It was messy within the community. There were so many different types of people clashing, wanting different things, wanting their own thing, going off and doing their own thing at the expense of others. And I'm just sat there thinking, if you're all doing that for yourselves, where's the community focus?
Mm.
Um, and that really made me think, okay, well, now more than ever, I need to bring more people into this, not just the same faces that, we see at various events or online. We need the people who have got a lot to say, but no one hears them because they don't have many followers. They don't have the visibility. They're not allowed to be out yet for whatever reason. So I created this project where I didn't even tell them what it was for. I took a chance and I said on social media, if you could say anything to a room full of influential people about being trans, what would you say? Like just a quick phrase, quick sentence, and this applies to anyone who's trans, gender non-conforming, or even an ally. Um, and unlike they were completely unaware, the plan was to basically take all their messages and put them onto a dress and wear it into an event. Um, and that's what I ended up doing. So it took months of planning, months of scheming, months of almost kind of having to dodge questions when people were asking what it was for,
Yeah.
um, just to pull off this stunt, I guess. And for me, it was heavily influenced by some of the work that Joe Lycett does and some of the stunts that he creates. And he actually was one of the first people to know about this from the start, and he kind of helped guide me a little.
That's
But yeah, it was
amazing.
just the need to create that. And I guess for me, it was important that it remained a surprise because it's that surprise that brings a real sense of depth and value to the actions that people are doing. Because I knew that they would expect me to just share a couple of quotes on social media or use them as talking points for some of my content. But I needed to put them front and center. So I guess that sneaky kind of scheming surprise element was, I guess, like Christmas, where you kind of finally realize what you've got as a present. In this case, it was you finally realize what you've contributed to, and that just kind of gives it that extra depth for them to kind of, I guess, cherish for themselves because this was all for them. I glued this together, but it would not have been possible without anyone out there submitting those messages.
The orange dress in question was such a moment at the Diva Awards. I saw it on socials and I was blown away by it. I thought it was absolutely stunning. And I love your wording was I took 100 of you with me to the Diva
Yeah.
Awards. And that was just the essence of what everything you've just said. You took them with you. And I
Yeah.
think that sums you up so beautifully.
Oh. I
Was it,
guess
did it
for
feel
me,
like a moment? Did it feel like a moment
yeah,
to you?
I think I remember getting out the Uber and there were like some people with cameras. I could see the doors, I could see the steps going in, and I literally thought, fuck, this is it. I hope I pull this off because that was that last minute of what if I fuck this up? What if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't have the intention, like
Yeah.
the impact? There are so many people counting on me because they're waiting to find out what this is.
Mm,
Um, so I just thought, you know what, fuck it, we only have one chance. Let's do this. Um, and it was so surreal.
yeah,
It was just, yeah, it was just such a moment. And for it to be at the Diva Awards as well, Diva have
of
supported
course.
me for so long. They've taken chances on me and they've been incredible. And when I spoke to Roxy about doing this, she was all for it. And I guess, Diva has helped me find a voice. It has helped hundreds, thousands of people to find a voice. And it was like a natural thing to work with Diva on this, to then create voices for more people as well. Um, and it was just, yeah, the event went by so quick and so many people saw the messages, so many people took photos. I didn't even realize they were taking photos.
It was
Um,
everywhere. It was everywhere.
yeah. And all I had to do was walk around. I saw myself as one of those, like, one of those trucks in city centers where it's just pulling this LED screen with an advert on the back.
Yeah.
I was the truck. And that my job was to just be there to take those people with me, but let their words do everything else. It wasn't for me to regurgitate what was on the dress. It wasn't for me to try and relay any of the feelings or the messages that people had sent in. It was a case of me saying, "This is why I did it. Read it for yourself to find out why it was needed."
Well, a truck, but a stunning truck, nevertheless. You looked absolutely gorgeous on the
Thank
night,
you.
and it was just so lovely to hear that it landed so well. I just want to tap back into the way you create content and that like video. You do it so well. You're so eloquent. You're so sharp with it. I love the calling in nature. I love the fact that you call people in. I also fucking love the fact that you're not afraid to call people out and you're not afraid to call a dickhead and to really take people to task.
Yeah,
Has that always been there?
definitely not. No, I think the more I find my own footing in the world, the more I realize what sort of voice I have. I guess I think if I don't use it, it's a waste. I'm here trying to create
Mm,
spaces for other people, but as well as creating space, I guess we have to kind of show them that it's okay to do certain things as well. And yeah, sometimes that involves calling a dickhead an absolute dickhead because they are. That's the
yeah,
only way I can describe it. They just are. Um, and for people to recognize that, yes, we as a trans community, especially, we're on the back foot. We're under so much scrutiny, but that doesn't mean we have to just be a certain part of ourselves just to appease the media scrutiny. We can still be ourselves. Just because we're trans, why can't we call someone a dickhead if they're being a dickhead towards us?
yeah.
Let's just say it how it is. And I guess that's how I started to kind of build up that confidence, and especially with online trolls as well, rather than engaging with them directly, because I know that they're not there to be educated.
No,
um I'll just let them say their thing and let other people see what dickheads they are.
yeah.
What I will do is then I'll take their quote and put it maybe on my story, or do a post about it to highlight why it's harmful, why what they're saying is incorrect factually, and use it and turn it into an educational tool, not for them, but for other people
For
who
others.
may be considering, well, what's wrong with what they said? Let's break it down and let's talk about it. And only by analyzing language, analyzing behavior, we can really start to see how we can make things better for those who are, I guess, the most vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to see. I love it. I love watching
Thank
your
you.
stories, your post, your videos. You shared one. It was a while ago, but it was about this troll, and then you ended up diffusing the situation because you found a common ground in music,
Yes, yeah, I
and
remember.
using that as a tool to maybe slightly educate them and even bring them along on the journey a little bit. That really stood out to me as a moment.
I honestly still think about how they're doing. I can't remember their username and I
Yeah.
can't like remember which post exactly, but yeah, it was it was music. And yeah, being someone who used to be a musician, I always looked to music for links,
Mm,
and it was because I happened to have a look on their profile to see what
yeah.
sort of person they were, and they were talking about a German metal band called Rammstein.
That you were a fan of. Yes, I remember
And
this.
I was like, well, yeah, they're celebrating, they're talking about their new album, and I'm thinking, I didn't find it was all that. And I just happened to drop in whilst I was talking to them on my post in the comments. I just said, oh, by the way, I preferred Rammstein's much earlier stuff. And straight away, I guess the shock of they've been looking at my profile hit home. Um, but also it shifted the dial away from the hate and that, the abuse towards this person listens to the same music
A
that I do.
commonality. A
Yeah,
common,
and
yeah.
I guess it's the reason why I share so many memes because for me, I'm trying to say to people, I may be completely different to you. I may share some similarities to you, but humor, we all laugh at the same things. And what you're seeing on my content, whether you're an ally, you're a trans person, whether you're a person of color, we all have humor. And humor, much like music, are things that bring us together if done in the right way. And with this particular troll, we ended up striking the conversation about, their earlier Rammstein's earlier works, and like when I went to see them, the show was spectacular. And the conversation was left at, well, let's agree to disagree on the music. And I just left it at that because I thought, I don't want to over egg this
Yeah.
situation. They've realized it's okay to disagree and walk away with the respect for each other.
Yeah.
And I hope they apply that to the trans content that they originally commented on anyway. And it just goes to show, yeah, we are just people.
Yeah. I love that. No, I remember it. I remember it. It stood out. And then, yeah, but like a lot of your content, Eva, I'm so excited to dive into your origin story. Are you ready to pause and rewind?
I am. I think it's much needed.
Let's do this. Take me back. Tell me all about little Eva.
Oh, Little Eva was very misunderstood. Internally and externally, I guess. Like I knew from a very young age that not that I'm trans, but there's just something so different about me, and I didn't fit in. Um, I can't say it was just because of the transness. It was because, being second generation, like to parents who immigrated over to the UK, that part of me stood out as well. And there was a lot going on for little Eva that made me feel like I didn't belong. And I was constantly in my own bubble, in my own head, trying to make sense of the world. And it was quite a lonely place. And I didn't have many friends, but I did have a lot of Lego. And for me, it was Lego and being creative. And I would always make the set following the instructions. That's when I guess I realized that I love following instructions. I love that order, um, which would later on in life basically show me that I'm neurospicy because I need that order. But it also showed me creativity that I don't have to follow those instructions. I could create something completely magical and something completely different if I wanted to. So for me, it was a lot of escapism, of throwing myself into my creativity, and a lot of drawing as well. And that was how I coped with the world because I felt so unheard, so misunderstood that I needed to do something to escape from that.
Yeah, I mean, so much of that resonates with me. Can I ask what was your Lego of choice?
I used to love the Technic stuff.
Okay.
So I guess it came from like my dad, because my dad's always been this person who thought if you're gonna do something, do it properly. If you're gonna buy Lego, don't buy the childish stuff. Buy the Technic stuff so that at least you can learn about working parts and you've got more, I guess, more options with building your own things. Um, so yeah, that was it. And I remember he used to sit down with me and help me to build this really complicated like racing car kit. And I remember thinking, I don't want this one. I wanted one where I could just play with little minifigures and do whatever. But he was quite regimented in the way that he taught. Um, and I guess that's kind of stuck with me, whether I like it or not.
Mm,
How I learn and how I see like I see tasks and how I approach them. Um, and it was quite bittersweet, this Technics kit, because I did find enjoyment because it really spoke to the neurodiverse part of me, even though I didn't know I was neurodiverse at the time. It spoke to a certain part of me when it came to order that, other kits didn't necessarily do so. But it was also horrible because it's not what I wanted to do.
mm. I've got so many questions. Have you been able to have conversations around those feelings now, and how much of little Eva do you see in yourself now, and how you show up in the world?
Um, I don't really talk about it much. I guess when I do keynotes, I touch on certain aspects of my life, but I never talk about me because I guess that comes from a lot of like what's been pushed onto me by my parents, that,
Mm,
being very traditional. East Asian culture is when something happens, you just pick yourself up, you just get on with it, you don't make that same mistake again. And it's that sort of repetitive routine, and you kind of start to lose humanity in that kind of way of doing things. It's, don't cry because, there's no point, it doesn't fix anything. Actively coming up with a solution, analyzing what went wrong, stopping it from happening again, that is what fixes things. So I guess there is that part of me that still lives in my head because I don't talk about my past, because I just sometimes can't help but think, well, what's the point? It doesn't really help. So unless I know there's a real benefit behind that,
mm.
I may not do. Um, but at the same time, there are parts of me now that recognize I probably should. This probably a therapist is going to have a field day with me in my childhood.
I think what you just said is so true. Is how does it serve us, and what
Mm,
this podcast is taking a moment to reflect on origin stories, and sometimes that can be really painful, and there merit to that? Is there not? I guess if it brings you healing
mm,
at some point further down the line, then fine. We have complicated relationships with our past, right? Especially
yeah.
when we didn't have the language to determine to kind of like navigate how we were seeing things. What was your view of the world at that time, with maybe feeling misunderstood and being forced to learn in certain ways? What did you feel about the world?
I guess I switched off from feeling at
Okay.
that time. Um, like especially when I started secondary school. Um, After the first year, I was bullied by some of the kids that I thought were my friends. They all turned on me. Literally, we started lunchtime as friends and finished lunchtime, and I still, to this day, had no idea what happened. We went to badminton club during lunchtime, and we were playing doubles, and the two we were playing against, they stopped. One went over and talked to the other, whispered something in their ear, started laughing. The person I was playing with went over, something was said, and then they just all stared at me. I was in tears, and I was like, what was going on? And I could feel this tension, and I just ran off. And I to this day I still never knew what happened. But straight away, as soon as we came back to lessons after lunch, the whole year group had turned against me, and I didn't know what had gone on. And little Eva, who was feeling very detached from the world, became even more detached
Mm,
because it was almost like when you try and attach to the world, this could happen, and therefore, why? Don't do it to yourself. So just, the door is shut, lock the door now, double lock it. Make sure you then go into another room within that room so that you're even more safe. And that's how I spent most of high school. Being the only East Asian kid for a long time as well didn't help because I couldn't just go from lesson to lesson hoping no one would notice me. There was a lot of racism, there were lots of digs. Even some of the teachers at the time said things that would be now considered
mm,
inappropriate. And yeah, it was a really lonely time. And I guess that's when I threw myself into art even more. Art class is what I absolutely live for. And then as I got older, I started picking up the guitar, learning how to play that as a separate outlet as well. So yeah, became a point where I withdrew even more. But then I had so much else going on top, like knowing I was going to hit puberty, knowing what it would do, knowing that I didn't want that puberty because it
mm.
wasn't for me. So there was a lot going on where I guess I had to try and find ways to deal with it. There was so much thrown at me that I didn't ask for, and all I could do was react and find ways to escape, I guess.
That's such, I mean, going back to your friends, that's such a cruel thing to go through. And we know that kids can be so cruel. What age were you around that time?
I would have been about 11, 12, about 12.
And how did you spoke about detachment, and I think that detachment, displacement are really common things that as queer people we go through, and that
Yeah.
feeling of not belonging. Um, what what did you did was there anyone that brought you comfort and support around that time?
Um, Not really. Like I couldn't even talk to my parents. I've
Mm,
ever since I was young, I've had this really fractured relationship with my parents because they wanted me to be a certain person. My dad especially. Like my dad was the sort of person who never said I love you. He would never talk to me unless it was to ask me questions about have I done my homework. Um, it wouldn't be how are you getting on at school? It would be why aren't you doing well in this particular subject after reading my report? And he was very, very dominant within the household. And it was like, you respect the older people, you just keep quiet. And so a lot of it, I just retreated inside my own head into things that would stimulate my mind, whether it's creativity or I got into playing chess. I mean, I ended up playing like I was on the chess team at school for a long time, and representing the school, then playing for East Cheshire at one point as well. That was for me a way to kind of just, I don't know, like I guess on a chessboard reenact the things that had happened to me and almost play them through strategically,
mm,
analyzing, well, if I do this, what are they going to do back to me? Can I stop that? Can I, do something, anything that allows me to have the upper hand? And I guess that was my way of dealing with the physical situation. I would retreat into a very strategic sort of mindset, um, but done so in a very creative way. So, not being able to speak to anyone or have anyone to confide in that level to where I could really open up.
mm.
Um, I guess thinking about it now, that really molded me into who I am today.
You can really see that, like with the escapism, but also the creativity, the analytical, the way that you approach things. I've heard you give like wonderful analogies around intersectionality, for example, and how you educate people around that. And you can definitely see those things shining through. What was the moment that started to ease up, um, and you were able to maybe open up and find community or just a little bit of relief from having to be that way?
I guess music has really helped because when you're a musician, no one really cares how you look. And I think for me, that was like that was an eye-opening moment because I could present in a certain way and nobody would care, especially when you're playing an alternative band as well. It's almost expected of you. And going from guitar to then, learning to play drums, it was for me an outlet, being able to write and play music to people, for them to sing it back to you, but have their own interpretation, but also understand your original meaning. For me, that was a time where I thought I could exist in this world as a version of me that's closer to the real me rather than the version that's been, pushed out there, the many versions that existed previously. Um, and I guess when I last played was about 2016 now, when I was last on stage. And that was a defining moment for me because I spent so long working towards a certain level, a certain goal, and I realized that I got there, but I didn't like it. Why?
Mhm.
I'd spent years strategically planning a career only to find when I got there, it didn't do anything for me. And I then I finished tour then and I came back home. Any musician will tell you, you get the post-tour blues, you just want to be back out there. But a part of me didn't want to be back out there. And I had to really sit down and think, well, why? What were the reasons for this? And I guess the analytical part of me really kicked in again, the need to really find this answer. And up until that point, I'd only gone to up to a certain point in terms of analyzing why I'd felt so, I guess, awkward.
Mm.
Um, why I sought refuge in being behind the drum kit, presenting in a certain way. I was quite androgynous at the time. And if people were like, oh, your drummer, she's amazing, I wouldn't say anything because for me, that was quite affirming. And like for my gender, and I just thought, okay, what is it about me? And that's for the first time ever that I felt like I could step out and I could be me and that everything that I'd felt, all this escapism, all this detachment, I didn't need to do that. And I guess that was a real eye opener. I don't need to escape from who I am. I am. And therefore, that's more than enough. I don't need to try and convince other people to accept who I am because I just am. And it came back to just be you. And so I took a chance on that.
Are you still on that journey?
Yeah, I guess we all are. Like, I've always thought when people say I've transitioned, I always thought, no, I personally don't agree with that. I don't think we ever stop
Mm.
because my transition in like 7 years that I've been out has been has been wild. Like it's gone in a direction that I never thought possible. Originally, I thought, my wife and I had a tattoo studio at the time. I'm just going to come out, transition. I'm going to step back into tattooing, managing a tattoo studio, and that'll be it. And the more I've journeyed, the more I've realized about my gender, about how I express myself, how I define myself, how I fit into the world. And I'm still learning. I'm always learning. And for the first 2 or 3 years after coming out, I was hyper feminine. I'd like literally thought, okay, that's what I need to be. I'm not on this side, I'm on that side. And I ran headfirst over there thinking I had to be and act in a certain way. And I got to one point where I thought, why am I trying to pass in a way that doesn't serve me? Why am I trying to fulfill a certain standard? Maybe not on this side, but over on that side. What's going on? And I guess the analytical part of myself kicked in again. And I started to wonder, well, do I need to be over there, like all the way over there? Or am I sometimes, not am I close to the line in the middle? What is it? Why do I have to be over there? And I started to learn a lot more about my gender, how it intertwined with my sexuality, being a person of color, and why I wasn't ready to feel certain things or to admit certain things. And the more I journeyed, the more I realized these things. But then the more I realized these things, it unlocks even more doors for things to explore. So I guess for me, certainly there is no I transitioned. It's I'm always transitioning. And I guess outside of the trans plus community, everyone is always transitioning. You know, the major transition being from when you turn 18 and become an adult, that is a transition. The things that you do now versus the things you did 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago. Let's look at fashion trends. People used to wear like horrendous like shell suits, tracksuit things, and that was considered cool and edgy at the time. But now you look back at perms and things like that, and you think, what were people thinking about then? But those are transitions that we've
Mm.
had socially, and it will always happen. How we are, how we present, how we think about ourselves now will not be the same in 5, 10 years' time.
Absolutely. We're all on that journey to becoming who we're going to be at this stage and then the next stage, and it doesn't stop. Can I just, pausing at 2016 and those first moments, what did career look like at that moment? What did community look like at that moment? Had you started to find um your belonging with other people and support networks? And what did family look like at that time?
Um, for me, community back then was still very much musicians.
Mm.
I guess I wasn't aware of social media as much as I am now. Back then, I would post random shit onto like social media. I didn't really care what it was for. I just thought, I like this, I'm going to post it. And a part of me still does that, but I'm more thoughtful behind it now, I guess. But back then it was musicians, and I communicated in the language of music, and that was, I guess, not specifically like through music, like through notes or sheet music or anything like that, but specifically through the emotion of music. That's how I communicated. I couldn't still talk to people about how I felt, but the anger, the frustration, the joyful moments would come through in the way that I play the music that I wrote. And even when composing, even like, using, for example, choosing a minor chord over a major or any other variant, a minor chord is somber. It's sad. It's a moody chord. And even choice of chords for me was my way of expressing who I am
Mm.
because my community spoke in music. I didn't realize that there was a trans community online. I didn't realize that, there was an LGBTQ plus community. Like I was vaguely aware of the letters. I was vaguely aware of, Pride and things like that. But it was very much, I that's not me. I don't belong there. I belong here in a music studio behind a drum kit or on stage.
Mm.
And I never connected the dots directly that I could be queer and a musician, and I had been a queer musician all along. And that I guess that was my tribe for for even up until then. I mean, the band that I was touring with, they're a Canadian band, and they like Pip and I love them. We've been fans of them for so long, and to go on tour with them was just stunning because they are so inclusive. They're so welcoming.
Mm.
And for me, I guess if it wasn't touring with them back in 2016, I guess there's a chance I wouldn't have come out
Yeah.
because it was their acceptance of everybody that really kind of spoke to me. So that when I was having that really analytical moment after tour, I guess a part of that let's be inclusive, let's really think about others and include them. That really sat with me and stayed with me. Um, so yeah, I owe them a lot more than I initially thought. But also knowing that that was my only family. My only family was the band members
Mm.
I was with. We were with each other constantly, if not messaging each other. My wife Pip, and at the time our little hedgehog Brian, who sadly is no longer
Oh.
with us. But that was my family because my biological family, I detached myself from them many years ago. We have no relationship. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I think the moment I was able to move out, I did for uni. And then I started working full time. I started doing my own thing. And I guess going back to the detachment I experienced when I was younger, that need to break away from my biological family is an extension of that detachment. I needed to detach from them
Yeah.
as well as everybody else. Um, and don't get me wrong, like it wasn't easy.
No.
I fell into debt because I didn't have parent figures to teach me about finance. I was living day by day. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know about, like household bills. No one really teaches you about that. And I was literally having to wing it. Didn't even know anything about council tax until all of a sudden I had a letter to say, like, are you registered to live here and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was a really steep learning curve, and I had to grow up so quickly and work full time to keep a roof over my head and carry on with music. So I guess that having to just focus on surviving day to day in itself was a form of detachment because I never stopped to think about my biological family, how my childhood impacted on me, my feeling of being lost, having to deal with emotions relating to why I've always felt so awkward or different about my gender compared to other people, why I didn't fit in with work colleagues and things like that. So, yeah, I guess a lot of my life has been detaching from things, whether it's through just surviving or like intentionally choosing
Yeah.
to detach.
A necessity sometimes. And actually, I think you said that it hasn't been easy, but you're okay with that detachment from your parents. And sometimes you have to reach that acceptance because,
Yeah.
blood is not thicker than water. And sometimes it's what we need to do to survive. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry you had to go through that, but as we've spoken about before, it really, really resonates with me having had my own experience of that. Um, you mentioned careers. What did you think was going to be what did you want to be when you grew up? I hate that expression, but what did you want to be when you
Ah,
grew up? And look at your career now. It's so varied, it's so rich. Um, what was your thinking and how do you feel about your career now, having been a musician and doing what you're doing now? And yeah.
I, when I was younger, I wanted to be an artist, a designer. And that was before I discovered music. And I remember doing in uni doing a project, and we were working with a really well-known international ad agency. And I guess for me, that was when I thought art isn't as free as I wanted it to be.
Mhm.
Having to work to a brief where you were essentially bringing someone else's idea and vision to life. And for me, that felt really restricting. So that's when I stopped kind of pushing myself down that avenue. Up until that point, everything that I decided was towards art. It had to be this. I planned out my career to my options, what I needed at GCSE, A level, and all that. And that's when I realized I'm in the wrong place here. And for me, music was complete freedom, complete expression. I could write what I wanted to write. As a band, we could play what we wanted to play. And in all the bands I've been in, we've never been, let's do this because we'll get signed. Let's do this because people will like us. It's just, we just like what we're doing. We just like what we write and we just enjoy playing together. Um, and I guess that has been a real eye opener because that has been so much freedom. And to know that such freedom exists, and for other people, it might not be music, it might look like something else. And that's absolutely great. But to experience that is, I guess, a light bulb moment. And to be able to follow that through. And then from that point onwards, I work full time to fuel my music. Buying cymbals is not cheap. And I thought, okay, well, I need a good job to be able to kind of uphold this whilst I kind of keep going in the background. Um, and yeah, I guess around that time I fell into like working in litigation as well. I'd worked my way up and I thought, okay, art isn't for me, music is, but I still need a job. So I started, I found a job at an insurance company. And I guess a part of me also thought, okay, well, whilst I'm on this journey to be a musician, let's see what I can do here. Let's make the most of this job at the same time. So completely like I guess it was completely unaware that I ended up carving a career in insurance and then subsequently litigation because I just thought, well, if I'm going to do this, let's do this right. But my main goal is still a musician. I kept telling myself I am not, I'm not a paralegal, I'm a musician, even though I kept working my way up and up and up. And yeah, I got to the point where I thought, okay, well, law isn't for me.
Mm,
It satisfies that kind of procedural part of me, the part that needs rules, that needs stability, but it doesn't satisfy the freedom of creativity. So yeah, I just did everything. I went back to the world of design and worked for a company. We did like we designed merch for bands and things like that. So that kind of took me back. But my focus was always music. And I think I'd like to get back to it one day, but what
oh,
I
that
do
was going to be a
now,
question. That was going to be a question. Can we expect
what
Eva back on stage at some point?
maybe I'm so rusty, honestly. I've
Okay.
last time I played was when Channel 4 did a documentary about my relationship with Pip and my coming out. And for the B-roll, they needed me playing drums in a studio. And I remember picking them up thinking, I'm so uncoordinated now. I I just can't do what I used to do. But I would love to because I mean I've still got all my drum kits at home and my guitars. And I just think I just look at them or I think about them thinking the freedom that each
Mm,
each instrument holds. I would really love to tap back into that
yeah.
freedom, that creativity, even if it's just for me, even if I'm
Yeah.
just playing for me now and I'm not having to, play to a huge audience. Um, I've never been one for the limelight, even when playing on stage, even when touring, or sitting behind a drum kit was for me. I
The
like that.
escapism, perhaps. And I
Yeah,
guess with with a world with so which is so messy right now, as you said from the beginning,
yeah.
maybe that's the escapism that you need.
Yeah, and I think from drums especially, it's all about rhythm.
Mm,
And yes, you can tune your drum heads to a certain pitch, but you have your drums, you have your cymbals. In terms of tone, that's set. It's not like a guitar where you've got a fretboard and like 24 frets and you can do, so many different scales and different chord variations with them. Your drums are a bit more limited, and what you create using that limited palette in front of you is a lot more challenging. And I guess hiding behind that as well, being able to use my drum kit as a wall where I am part of this band, but I'm also in my own office. And I
yeah.
used to refer to my drum kit as, being back in the office. Um, so yeah, maybe I'll play again.
I'm holding out hope. I'm holding out hope. What was the moment that you found yourself in inclusion?
Um, I guess that was something that was a complete accident because I spoke up more and more. People asked me to speak at various things. I ended up doing a lot of panel work. I became a lot more vocal online, talking about the need for inclusion and how recognizing my own diversity, how we all need to be recognizing each other's diversity. And I think I kind of just fell into that. People would contact me and say, I saw this that you did, and that really resonated, or, we think our audience would really like to hear that as well. And before I knew it, I'd ended up in this really corporate kind of space, I guess, talking to like various organizations, various people about the need for trans inclusion, the need for intersectionality. And at the start, there were words like intersectionality I didn't even understand. I heard it answered about, and I was just like, wow, that sounds really fascinating. And I took a deep dive. Ended up like researching where it stems from, reading about Kimberly Crenshaw and everything to do with it, and thinking, okay, that's intersectionality. What about other things? And I guess that really sparked that that analytical. part of me
Yes.
that really needed to go back and think,
Mm,
well, this is the world that I've been missing.
yeah.
Previously, I vaguely knew about an LGBTQ plus community. Now I am part of that community.
Yeah.
There's so much history I don't know. I need to go back. And that being the absolute nerd that I am for this sort of thing, being able to deep dive, being able to have a million tabs open on my browser, being able to just research constantly, I absolutely loved it.
I love this. I mean, I'm even in this short time we've spent together, I'm seeing so many common themes. Before we started, we were chatting about hyperfixation, but I'm loving the self-described nerdness. And I've heard you talk about intersectionality, LGBTQ plus history, and the way you do it in a really strategic, analytical way that is also so creative. All of that shines through. So I'm loving piecing these bits together of your story. Um, can you talk to me about someone who has shaped you most along the way?
Oh, I guess my wife Pip has definitely shaped me. She is the most patient, loving person ever, and I guess that's why when we met in March of 2013, I knew that was it. She's the one, you know.
Straight away.
Straight away, yeah, I was like fuck married at first sight and shows like that. We don't need that. True love still exists, and we just have to be open to seeing it. And if we look too hard, we're gonna miss it. And for me, I'd come out of a relationship then, and I wasn't looking for another relationship. We were playing a gig that night, and she just happened to come along with her friend, and we started talking. We had a lot in common, and I just thought, wow, this is one amazing person. Um, and then yeah, and like we met, and like I proposed 2 months after that. And then 8 months after meeting, we got married. You know, people were saying we were rushing into it, that we were making mistakes, but we knew we were doing it for us. We weren't doing it for anything else other than love. Um, and you know, we're nearly 11 years now. We celebrate our 11th wedding anniversary this November. So, you know, we have stuck by each other, and I guess she has shaped me because she's she's calming for me. She's like the missing part of my
Mhm.
jigsaw, and we you know we are what each other needs,
Yeah.
and I think that that's really helped to kind of pull me away from certain things and to be more balanced, to be more patient. So she's definitely like person, but I guess also being religious, or I used to be. I'm in a love-hate relationship with religion at the moment, and I guess I'm kind of falling away from it. But from about from about the age of, I don't know, 23, 24, I found Christianity. And that at the time of my life really helped to guide me. It gave me purpose. It gave me some sort of meaning. And
Mm.
it was that direction. And I guess that's really helped to shape me as well. So it's not so much someone,
Yeah.
it's something that believing in something greater. And also, although I'm not, I mean, I was always a really lazy Christian. I'd hardly go to church, but I would pray every day, like twice a day at least. And I guess the more I thought about myself, the more I analyze who I am now, the more I think, does religion still serve me? Maybe not, but it certainly shapes who I am.
Mm.
It's given me a deeper sense of understanding of those around me, um, being able to make sacrifices, to put yourself out there for other people, and to recognize that we don't have to have everything ourselves. You know, we go through life wanting to be rich, wanting to be famous, wanting so much. And I guess that's really helped to shape me and to reframe what is success, what is having it all. And even now I see like influencer types on social media who everything they do is calculated. almost trampling on other influencers so that they
Hmm.
can be top dog because they just want to be famous. They want the dollars coming in. But for me, I guess religion helped me to realize that having a loving family, having a loving wife, having a family unit that allows me to feel at peace is for me is success. And whilst I'm not as religious these days, I still I still get messages from the universe, and by that it's like an online. I get an email every day from the universe, and it just sends me like spiritual messages. And I know that they're the same messages that they send to everyone who
Hmm.
subscribes to that, which is I think it's tut.com for anyone who's interested. And you literally put in there like your name and your aspirations, and it sends you its message every day. But even though they are the same message for everyone, it still makes me think. It still grounds me, and it's the first thing I read every morning in my inbox. Um, and it helps me to really, yeah, anchor myself in and being realistic in what I want from life.
Thank you for sharing. Firstly, big shout out to Pip. Big shout out.
She's amazing.
But also with Christianity and religion generally, as queer people, I think it's okay to have complicated relationships with it and to take what you need from it. I had a religious upbringing for a while as a teenager, and whilst I'm left with deep scars as a result, there's still no denying that it absolutely shaped the way in which I show up and my understanding of the world. So, I think that sometimes it flexes from religion to spirituality almost, doesn't it?
Mhm.
And kind of like, yeah,
Absolutely. That I
yeah,
think that is in itself is a transition that
yeah,
we
of
kind of
course.
we shift towards. And and then I get it, like when people say like, Jesus was an inspiration. If we were to read the Bible, yeah, because the actions, the selflessness,
Yeah,
so many other people within the Bible are also like that too. But I guess my transition into spirituality has become more reflective and analytical.
mm,
Why are we celebrating those figures for doing that? We are capable of all doing that
yeah,
ourselves. So let's celebrate ourselves. Let's celebrate each other for having those qualities as well here in present day, rather than dwelling on what may or may not have happened years ago in a book.
for sure, for sure. And taking those traits is the way forward. It's
Mm.
how you carry those forward. My final question for this segment is, what are you most proud of to date?
Oh, I don't know. There are lots of things spring to mind immediately, but I guess we're watching now in real time as my analytical brain is trying to kick in and quickly try and prioritize what I would say, like, there are things like being a Guinness World Record holder, but then I think, well, anyone can work towards that.
What was the record for?
Playing as part of the world's largest drum ensemble. So yeah, hundreds of drummers playing the same thing at the same time for a certain period of time. And that was 2012. We hit that record, and we still hold that record to
That's
this day.
amazing.
So there are things like that. Um, but I can't help but think anyone can work towards a world record and holding a world record if they work hard, they train. Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, the thing that I'm most proud of is my journey and who I've become today, because I know, looking back and when moments of reflection, all the shit that I've been through and all the possible deviations from that journey, I know how I could have turned out, but the way that I turned out is because I stuck by certain things and stuck with, no, this is how I want to live my life, and I stuck with it. And I guess for me, I am really proud that I could have caved, I could have been influenced by other people, I could have gone down different routes, but no, I stuck it out despite that.
The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. Are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Oh, yes, this is bit I'm looking forward to.
What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
Oh, okay. I've got to say, an album has been Diorama by Silverchair. It's an musically, it's a masterpiece. Lyrically, it's a journey into my mind as well. And when Daniel Johns wrote that, I just immediately fell in love with that. Silverchair has been one of my favorite bands for a long time because the music that they write has really spoken to me over the years. I've also got to say there's a film as well, Requiem for a Dream,
Heard of
which
this?
it's dark, but it's really eye-opening into a person's mind and how when you want something and you set out to achieve something, how quickly you can become derailed if you don't focus on the goal, or you hyperfixate on the goal and you can still be derailed. So it's finding balance in your life. And I guess that really, I mean, going back to last question from the previous section, it really has influenced me because when we navigate this path in life, we can be pulled in so many directions. And if we don't focus or, we focus too much, we can be pulled off track. And we've got to find the right amount of focus to make sure we get there and that the journey is still enjoyable. So, and there's a book that comes from as well. So yeah, absolutely. And Last Exit Brooklyn is also is a phenomenal book. But I guess the one book that really stood out for me is The Catcher in the Rye.
Okay, amazing. Amazing. I need to watch Requiem for the Dream. Focus is not my strong point.
No, you've got to be in a certain mindset. It's dark, it's heavy, and I guarantee you'll come away from that thinking, wow.
Okay,
So yeah, if you do watch it, let me know what you
I
think.
will do, definitely. What's a saying that you live by and one that you'd put in the bin?
Ooh, one I'd definitely put in the bin is man up. That's something
Oh,
when I was growing up, presenting in a masculine way, I would always hear, and I
yeah,
fucking hate it. It
it's
serves no
awful.
purpose to anyone, and it's one of those phrases where we just say it when we don't know what to say, we just say it. Or when we're trying to hurry someone along, we just say it. Well, we're not respectful of their feelings. We're not understanding what they're going through. So that can get in the bin
Right
right
in the
away.
bin.
Um, the phrase I always say is be your own kind of beautiful, because as I've learned, there is no one way to be beautiful. We all aspire to beauty, but what is beauty? Beauty is essentially what people have told us beauty should be. But why are we listening to them? Why can't we listen to ourselves? And I guess a bit like, how I fell out of love with Christianity. Why are we holding certain people, certain figures on a pedestal? Why are we not looking internally? So yeah, be your own kind of beautiful, regardless of what's going on in the world, how you may feel like you don't fit in. You are beautiful and you do fit in. Just focus on that.
Mic drop. I love that. What's been the best adventure of your life so far?
Ooh, I'm still on it now, my transition. It's been full of ups and downs. Don't get me wrong, it's been traumatizing at times. It's been depressing. It's been annihilating, but at the same time, it's been the best journey because I'm on the path to becoming the best version of myself. I don't fully believe I'm there yet, but I'm on that. I'm on the way. And that as a journey, the way I'm able to reflect and to look back at where I started from, that is a journey worth more than any holiday or anything, even going on tour with a band that I love. It's worth that many times over.
Thank you. That's so beautiful. What three words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
Quirky, um, stubborn. It's, I'd have to say that. Um,
Does your wife think you're stubborn?
oh yeah, yeah. It's taken me a while to realize that and admit it, but I guess that in itself is stubbornness, isn't it?
Own it.
Yeah. And I guess reluctant.
Okay.
I think a lot of what I do, I've done reluctantly, whether it's because I'm not seeing other people do it, so I put myself out there to do it, or I don't want to be in certain spaces, but I still need to, so I do it
Yeah.
anyway.
Taps back into that visibility conversation, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's fast forward a bit. What exciting things do you have coming up?
Oh, I have something massive planned coming up.
Oh,
I can't say what it is yet, but it will be the most, I guess, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It'll be big. It'll be the most extreme thing I've done with my career, I guess. Um,
okay.
so there's that. Um, and I guess more of the same, but me taking more of a back seat because the more I see others trying to rise to the top, trying to push to the front, the more I just think I don't want that. That's not for me. Um, I'm very much a behind the scenes sort of person. I don't I'm not in it for the limelight. I'm not in it for fame and success in that traditional sort of way. I'm in it to create change, and the best way to create change is to just get your head down and get on with it in the background.
What brings you joy?
Oh, my relationship with my wife and my family, my dog Boomer. Uh,
Boomer.
Boomer, he's so grounding. But yeah, that's joy because I've always wanted a dog. Like I've been in relationships where you know, there's been a dog in the family, but I've never had my own dog, and I love dogs, and I just think they're just they're hilarious, they're cute, they have a sense of loyalty, and I resonate with that loyalty, and I think yeah, it's there's nothing Boomer can do that's that I could ever be angry at because everything about him is so pure. He's not calculating. He doesn't scheme. He just exists and he's just happy constantly, and that's really infectious. And that brings me so much joy just being around him.
It just sounds like the home life that you've created with Boomer and Pip has just given you that belonging and
Mm,
joy that you needed.
definitely, yeah. I think I've always gone through life thinking, what is a family and why don't I have it? Why don't I have that belonging?
Yeah.
And I have that with Pip and Boomer. And we're hoping to get Boomer a little brother so we can kind of grow the family a bit more. So yeah, watch this space.
Well, that is exciting as well. What takeaways, practical takeaways, do you have for anyone wanting to maybe carve out a career in inclusion or create an inclusive space?
Oh, don't go into it thinking you're going to change the world
Hmm.
because I thought that, and it's a really naive way of thinking because we can only leave our own mark in a certain way, but creating change is a massive team effort, and you know, we need to create the links and the bonds to work together, not work against each other. So yeah, if you want to go into it, don't expect, that you're going to go in there and change hearts and minds. People have been a certain way for years. Certain generations have been, are really stubborn
Hmm.
because that's all they know. You can't expect to go in and talk to them and expect them to change just like that. It takes years for people to unlearn fully. The older you are, the more you have to unlearn, is the way I look at it. And we need patience. So, go into it by all means, but just be realistic.
It's fair. Yeah, absolutely. My final question for you today, Eva, is this. Do you have any words of encouragement or wisdom for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
I would say that the world is going to judge you no matter what. You know, people around you will judge you, family will judge. So if you're going to be judged, then at least make sure that they're judging the best and the correct version of you. Um, if you want to achieve a certain goal, great, do it. Let them judge you for how you've reached that goal. Let them criticize, you know, whether you did things the right way according to them or not. But make sure you smash that goal and let them judge and criticize based on what you're actually doing rather than allowing that judgment and that negativity to derail you because it's always going to happen. You know, so don't not do something just because of that, because you're fearful of that criticism. There will always be people to criticize, so fuck them. Just do it.
Fuck 'em, let's do it. Eva, I am so grateful that I got to spend this time with you. I feel like I have got to know you so much better. I love what you're putting out there, and I'm holding out to see you on a stage at some point soon.
You never know. It might happen sooner or later.
Thank you so much. I'll see
Thank
you
you for
soon.
having me.
Yeah, I'm blown away by another amazing conversation on pause and rewind. And again, just so grateful to Eva for sharing so openly. Um, Yeah, it's no secret that I'm a fan of Eva's work. It was wonderful to hear her talk about the campaign We All Have Voices and that moment in the orange dress where she had those messages featured from the trans community and allies around what they wanted to see from the government when it came to trans support and trans care in society, and the impact that has had, and the way that Eva has used her own experience in the way that she navigates the world, and advocates for the LGBTQ community and trans and non-binary lives specifically. We heard a lot about how little Miss Eva was misunderstood, and how that feeling went on for quite some time, and the impact that that has had. But it just makes the fact that Eva experiences joy and belonging in her family life with Pip and Boomer now so beautiful. And, Eva talked a lot about how the backbone of her work is led by kind of like, wanting to show up to other people for other people so that they don't experience the same things that she has done. Her best journey to date, a most exciting adventure to date is her transition, and her transition to becoming herself. The best transition of her life so far, and to being her best self as well. And Eva uses the word quirky, stubborn, and reluctant as the three words that she uses to describe her origin story. I'm loving that quirkiness. I love seeing the threads of Eva's neurospiciness, and the analytical and strategic side of her merging with the creative and the innovative side, and really seeing that part of her. And I love that self-confessed stubborn, and then reluctance as well. We spoke about the reluctant activism, which came up on a previous episode, but how Eva's doing that because she needs to be visible for other people. Eva, thank you so much. I'm so again blown away by the conversation. So grateful for your time. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please do share, like, subscribe, get it out there for anyone you feel might benefit from listening. There's so much to take away from this conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in to Pause and Rewind, and there'll be more amazing guests coming soon. Cheers.